Welcome everyone to another episode of Vee Mindful's Real Relationships. Y'all, today we got an actual doctor. And today we're going to talk about the pelvic floor and menopause because we know that my audience is typically those of the mature age. So if you don't mind introducing yourself, Dr. Jessie Glaze.
I'm Dr. Glaze. I go by Jessie. It's odd, but anyway, I am a physical therapist and specifically I treat primarily pelvic floor physical therapy and in particular chronic pain.
Before we even get into this conversation, let's talk about what is the pelvic floor and why should we care about our pelvic floor?
The pelvic floor is all of the muscles that control your ability to pee, to poop, and to have sex. The reason you should care is because you need to pee and poop and have sex. Those are very important things in some way, right? Like those are all pretty, especially pee and pooping are biological requirements. And for most people, sex is something enjoyable. It's an important part of life. And it's better if you take care of your pelvic floor.
Somebody left a comment on my video about sex after 50, and they were like, people 50 years old still have sex. Yes, damn it. Yes.
They better be.
Yeah,
Yes. What?
50 is not old.
I know. I was talking to a friend and I actually said, I was like, I want more women having sex. Like that is my mission. And I swear, like it sounds so wild, but it's like if there are women out there who want to have sex and like can't, or it's not feeling good, or they're not enjoying it anymore, but like they want to be enjoying it,
Mhm.
I want them to have all the resources that they need to do that.
Hmm.
We give men all kinds of tools and tips and tricks and pills and whatever to make this all work for you. And it's like, that is so unfair.
Oh,
And
girl, we gotta get into this then for real
yeah.
because I saw so many comments. Okay, one, that there's a lot of women whose sex drive, just is gone. Like, girl, it's
Mhm.
gone, right? And so you, like you said, you were just talking to your friend about you want more women having sex. Why aren't we having sex?
I think there's a ton of emotional reasons that can also
Mhm.
go into this, right? Where women in general, our libido is a little bit more complicated. And this is like a
Mm,
gross generalization, right? Like it's not,
okay.
I don't want to get the like, not all men, not all women. I know, we
Mhm,
know.
uh-huh.
But in general, our libido is a little more complicated. Usually there are more emotional factors. So it's one of those things where sometimes like having your partner clean is a turn on because it's something you don't have to do, it's something you don't have to worry about, right? So especially if
Mhm.
you take the role of the house manager,
Hmm.
having somebody else take some of that work actually improves libido, and if they're not, it can make it worse. So it's a complicated thing. But
Mm,
especially as you age, part of what comes up too is that every tissue gets a little bit drier and a little bit less blood flow as you get older. That's why suddenly it's like I've got to use lotion like I never did before, like every
mhm,
year it's
mhm.
getting worse. Why we've got all these elaborate skincare routines to, reduce wrinkles and keep things
Yep.
moving, skin gets paperier. Well, that also happens with your lady parts, all of them, right? Like
Mhm.
things dry up a little bit more, you're not as lubricated, things tend to thin, the tissues can get thinner,
Yep.
and the muscles can get weaker. And that combination leads to more burning and irritation, especially with penetration, and less enjoyment and sensation during
Mhm.
sex, which
Okay.
kind of pulls away from the okay, well, then why would I have sex if it's hurting and I'm not getting that much out of it anymore?
What can a woman do if she's experiencing that with penetration, the burning and the irritation? What can she do about that?
Usually, like pelvic floor therapists specialize in this. So if that's available to you, by all means, check it out. It's the same as when your hands get dry, they actually make moisturizers that
Mhm,
you can use. And they're not the same as lubricants, although there's some
mhm.
overlap, but you can buy like vaginal moisturizers. Use them internally. Usually, I say leave them in overnight. Additionally, having more orgasms actually helps increase lubrication and reduce that burning pain. So, especially if you have ways to get orgasms that do not involve penetration, the more often that you do that, better those tissues are going to be. Yeah.
I saw a statistic, girl, and I can't remember what it was. Take it. There's a percentage of women who have never had an orgasm and never will. Is it like 30%? I can't remember that number, but it's yeah. I was like, oh my
Never
gosh.
will.
Yes, like they just can't. I'm like, why can't you have an orgasm? Is it because they never explored their bodies, or maybe I don't know. Like, why do you think some women may not be able to ever have an orgasm?
A lot of the women that I have talked to about libido, and libido is
Mhm,
different from orgasm, right? Libido is about
mhm.
desire.
Yep.
And if you tend to be somebody who has lower libido, it may be harder for you to achieve orgasm because you just aren't in the mood as often.
Mhm.
But a huge one, honestly, is anxiety. If you are in your
Mm,
head, or if you feel in some way that your
mhm.
body is shameful and not to be explored and not to be enjoyed and not to be loved, you are a lot less likely to get pleasure from it. There are definitely some societal components to this. And people love to talk about the biology of like women are different from men, and that is true. I live in Charlotte now.
Mhm.
Living in the Bible Belt, I've had a few patients that came to me strictly because they were having issues, and their issues were related to religious upbringing and being told forever that your body is not okay to enjoy. It's not for that, and it's shameful and it's sinful. And then they get married and it's like, okay, great, be fruitful and multiply. And they're like, I don't even
Yeah.
know what's happening.
I had a woman on this podcast. Girl, it's been well over a year. She is a Christian sexpert, and she
Oh,
talks
I
about
love
that when we talked about the vaginal moisturizers. In 2024, we went to Bali and we had the pleasure of making coconut oil. And
that.
now this coconut oil, y'all, and now I'm thinking about doing a retreat to Bali because I love Bali, right? I loved it, and we're all going to go do the coconut oil. Let me just tell you, making the coconut oil fresh there, it is the smoothest moisturizer when it comes to sex. I think coconut oil is a great lubricant, but I know you said there's differences, but it is great to add to if you're feeling like that penetration. Like, because I also suggested like the vitamin E suppositories. Now,
Yeah.
those are great, right? But the
Yes.
coconut oil on the outside of the skin, because like you said, the skin down there becomes thin. And I'm like, if you have a partner who might be on the larger side, and
Mhm.
I'm just telling you that the skin, you need to, girl, moisturize the thin skin down there, because it's a lifesaver.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought up coconut oil because that is one of my like go-to tricks for the external skin, especially
Yes.
like the lips and everything. Coconut oil is I will have people who come in and they're like, I have like burning when I pee and it's not an issue. I have burning with penetration. I feel like I have incontinence. And you look and things are all like kind of inflamed, and they add
Hmm.
coconut oil and within a week they're like, actually everything's better. All of it's
Yes. Yes, I am a huge believer in that. So I'm glad you and I share that. I have seen a pelvic floor therapist, and I think the work that you guys do is amazing. But I am of a mature age. When I was having children,
better.
they just said do the kegels, and it was like I never knew, well, what the hell am I doing a kegel for, right? I thought
Hmm.
literally, oh, I because I'm gonna get a tight cooch, I'm gonna have a tight cooch, but
It's
other
like
than
a
that, I was
reason, yeah.
but nobody's like telling you that. And then after my middle child, who was now 25, I'm laughing, girl, I'm peeing, I'm coughing,
Mhm.
I'm peeing. And nobody's still telling me that, oh, girl, that's your pelvic floor, right?
Yeah.
So had I known all of this many years ago, I would not have had like the pain and the pressure. So once somebody starts experiencing issues with their pelvic floor, what are some of the first symptoms that they may come across, that, hey, maybe I need to see a pelvic floor therapist?
The earliest one that I hear a lot is like, it started, I couldn't jump on a trampoline. And it's
Oh,
even like it's a joke, right? Oh, like, well, I know I'll never jump on a trampoline any before again. I've had 4 kids or whatever. And it's like, it doesn't have to be that, but I'll see it a lot with laughing, coughing, sneezing, jumping on a trampoline, or running. Oh, I leak a little.
yeah.
That's usually how it starts. Or
Mm.
it starts with, and this is one people don't think about. Every time I need to go number 2, I'm pushing, I'm straining, my face gets red.
Ooh.
People don't
It-
realize, but like pooping is a big part of your pelvic floor. And if you are having to push to go, if you're making that like
mhm.
sound, you're doing it wrong and you
Ooh.
are causing damage to your pelvic floor. and I don't want to say damage, like it's reversible. It's not like you broke it, but you are stressing out and straining on your pelvic floor and
Okay.
increasing your chances for some of these other issues. But it's basically like stage one is that, or used to be, that you can, if you like separate the lips, basically, you can see it when you try to
It's
push
protruding.
down. You can
Mhm.
see things coming. They're not actually like falling out, but you can see that
Mhm.
the walls are collapsing in a little bit more than you would expect. Most people, even until it's like, or even up to it's actually like starting to kind of come out a little bit, there's still a lot that you can do to reverse that process. Or to at the very least decrease how much it feels like it's falling, how much pressure there is, how much pain there is.
What are some of those things? Because I know I talked in my episode about, when I talked about my experience with the pelvic floor and,
Mhm.
and then going to see a pelvic floor therapist about my really good girlfriend. She had returned because she was in the military. She
Mhm.
had returned to PT and started running at 6 week, and this was her fourth kid. She felt a bulge coming through her vagina and
Mhm.
realized that she had a double prolapse. So it was her uterus, and I believe it's a uterus in her bladder. I don't think there was
Mhm.
a third. I don't think it was the rectum, but I know it was a uterus in the bladder, but the uterus started to protrude through her
Mhm.
vagina. And I know the vagina is not a sterile environment. And I've read that if it does start to protrude, you can use your hands and push it back in. Is that when you get to that part, because that's pretty severe. Is
Yeah.
even that reversible, or is that just,
It's
surgery? That's it.
So it's treatable, and whether it's reversible or not, I feel like is a little controversial. You can essentially, they create something called a pessary. Are you familiar with
Yep.
this? Yeah.
I've heard of it.
So
Yes.
it's a device and it's fitted to you and it can help hold it up. And in the meantime, you can rebuild some of your pelvic floor strength or even use hypopressive exercises to
Okay.
help lift all of the organs up and see if they can get things to come back. Because
Mm,
some people are going to end up needing surgery, and usually they call it like tacking up your bladder. But
mhm.
even in those cases, you need the therapy first to make sure that everything is strong and setting you up for a good outcome. Because
Okay.
the other thing is, if it was caused by habits, like you're straining a lot or you're doing a lot of breath holding and it's causing all this extra
Mhm.
pressure that's pushing your organs down, when they lift them back up surgically, if you're still pushing all that pressure on them, they're going to push right back down. And that's why you'll
Mm,
sometimes hear about like, oh, it was a failed surgery or they had to redo it.
mhm.
Well, that's because those habits didn't change. So,
Mm.
a big one for sure for avoiding that is like not straining, not pushing a lot. And that's also why babies can cause it, right? Because
Yep.
most of the time, you're not going to tell somebody mid labor not to strain or push, right?
Oh, heck yeah. I can share this because we're grown, but I know with my third child, I not only pushed out a baby, but I pushed out some Chipotle too. So, and
Hmm.
I had never had that with the first two, but I did push out all three of my kids, and it took a long time. And I'm pretty sure that contributed to, having a weaker pelvic floor. Let's back up, and then let's say that somebody with a weaker pelvic floor, or even somebody who's had surgery, but let's say that due to the pelvic floor issues, right, that they have or have had, what are some of the things they could do to, have more comfortable sex or continue to have a healthy sex life, even dealing with these pelvic floor issues?
A big one is using a good lubricant. And the other big one is positioning. Let's start with positioning because it's less complicated. Basically, explore, but depending on where your prolapse is, there are going to be positions that feel
Hmm.
better and positions that feel worse.
Hmm.
Another one is if you have particularly a larger partner or if things have dropped a bit where there's just less room, the O nut is an amazing invention. It is a silicone donut shaped device, and you put it at the base of his manhood.
Hmm.
And so it continues to create the sensation of like having something there, but he can't go as far. And
An O
so
nut.
I think it's OHNUT. This device is genius if you are having issues where, the
I've
deeper they
never
go,
heard
the
of
worse
this.
it feels.
Let me write this down.
Yeah, this is a good one. Like you might want to link this down below because
I absolutely will.
It is a very valuable device, especially if that deeper penetration is painful or if you have a much larger partner. It can be really helpful
Mm,
for preventing hitting some of those more tender spots, especially if they've dropped lower. So, yeah,
mm,
that's a game changer. Positioning super important. And then a lubricant that
mhm.
doesn't suck. And this is like a huge soapbox of mine because almost everything you buy at the drugstore sucks. It usually has glycerin in it, and glycerin messes up your pH and causes things like vaginosis and not UTIs necessarily, but disrupts your pH. You're
Yep.
more likely to have
Mhm,
yeast infections. It's just a whole mess.
mhm.
So there are some really, really, really good companies, but what you want is a lubricant that is either you get to pick water based is the easiest to work with because you can use them with condoms, you can use them with anything.
Yes.
Oil based, if you don't need condoms, oil based is a lot slipperier, also a little messier. You may not want to lay down a towel, but you can use
Mhm.
coconut oil or other oils. And then they also have silicone based. And so silicone based don't work well with silicone toys. They can kind of mess each other up and adhere to one another. But silicone based lubricants are by far the slipperiest.
Oh,
They do
okay.
not affect your pH at all because it's not water based. And they are super slippery and stay slippery. Usually with
Mm.
a water-based lubricant, you'll kind of absorb it almost like a
Yep.
moisturizer. So there
Mhm.
some people may find like, "Oh, we're halfway through and we need to have like a quick timeout and lubrication break." You don't get that with silicone. And so
Okay.
that is a
No, wait,
benefit of it.
can you use a silicone lubricant with condoms?
Yes,
You can't.
but
Okay.
not with silicone toys. So if you're using the O
Okay.
nut, your
Mhm.
fourth option is they make a few lubricants that are called hybrid lubricants, and they are water
Mhm.
based with a teeny bit of silicone and not enough to disrupt anything.
Okay.
So I would
Good
say
to know.
that is like your top tier choice if you're like, I want to use condoms, I want to have access to toys or use the O nut or and things are not slippery enough. A hybrid lubricant is your friend.
Okay. Now, for the average patient, let's say the average
Mhm.
patient that comes to see you, are they typically younger women or women of a mature age, such as myself? Like, when do women typically start experiencing issues with their pelvic floor?
Oh my gosh, I have had everywhere from 14, and we don't do
Oh,
internal
gosh.
work on 14, but like gymnasts, they call them tumble
Oh,
tinkles, to 70 plus. So it
wow.
totally
Mm,
depends. A lot of the time, though, I will say most women come too late. And the reason I
mm,
say that is they come and we start asking them questions about their habits and about their
mm.
experiences and about things. And they did not realize that those were symptoms. They thought that
Yep.
that was normal and they've been experiencing it since high school or since the
You
first
know,
baby.
So what can we do better about that? Because, I mean, I'm using my voice on this
Yeah.
platform, whether it's YouTube and my podcast, but I really feel like I got the information too late as well. It's like, why
Yeah.
aren't we talking about menopause and our symptoms and a pelvic floor? Like, what can we do better about that?
Honestly, I would really love if like high school health classes and high school track
Mm,
teams and high school gymnastics and cheerleading
mm,
teams had somebody come in and talk to these girls
mm-hmm,
because it's unbelievably common and normalized where they're like, "Oh yeah, well everybody like if you really do a sprint, you're going to pee a little." And they
mm,
don't realize that okay, that's you creating a pattern of breath
yep,
holding and overusing abdominal pressure to get a result.
mm-hmm.
And it's
And
like,
the constant, like, hitting the pavement,
yeah.
the jumping, I ran I wasn't a sprinter, but all in my 30s,
Mhm.
I did a couple of half marathons. I trained for a marathon, but I
Oh,
didn't run the
nice.
marathon. But that running girl, I'm pretty sure having 3 big-headed babies, and the running girl, my pelvic floor, I didn't know until I will tell you my first symptom, doctor, that I
Mhm.
did not know it was during COVID. And I was just sitting at home and I was like, what is this damn pressure? It was just
Mm.
pressure and pressure. And it was at the end of the day. Right,
Yeah.
and so I went to the doctor and I was like, "Oh my gosh, do I have," don't be Googling stuff because Google will tell you that, God damn it, you got triplets in there or even worse, right? And the doctor said the pressure that you're feeling is because at the end of the day, you've been on your feet and your organs are just pushing and pushing and pushing. And by then, she said, you have to go see a pelvic floor therapist. In my late 40s at this time. I had never heard a pelvic floor what, and I wasn't even sexually active at the time because we were locked down in COVID. I was single.
Mhm.
And I was thinking, girl, is my sex life over? I remember calling my daddy, yes, my daddy. And I was like, Daddy, I'm not gonna be able to have sex. I'm like, oh my gosh, my coochie is broken. And I was like, what the hell? But I just feel like nobody talks about this, and I'm
Mhm.
so glad that you said I didn't even think about gymnasts. Didn't even think about these young girls in track. Like, yes,
Yeah, it's a huge problem.
wow. Okay. So what are some preventive, and I know Kegel is one, but I feel like a lot of people don't know how to do them properly, but what are some
Definitely not.
preventive measures that we can take, especially for those who aren't having any issues, or you might be having a little pee tinkle tinkle on yourself, but you're not having where the peekaboo stuff, but what are
Yeah.
some things that women can do to prevent issues?
Yeah, so Kegels are definitely one, and I agree that most people do them wrong. Either they're squeezing everything. Like,
Mhm,
one thing to know, a good test of if you're doing a Kegel right,
mhm.
no one should be able to tell you're doing it. So if you're
They're
holding
like,
your breath, if you're changing your posture, if you're squeezing your thighs, if you're squeezing your abs, none of that. The it's my least favorite cue, and it works every time, is it's almost like you're trying to pick up a blueberry with your vagina. That's a Kegel. I know, it's like paints a horrible picture, but everyone does it
I'm,
right when I say it. I know.
I'm gonna
I
go
I hate it.
try. No,
Like,
I'm kidding.
I've tried to come up with something better, and that is the one that everybody gets. They're all like, "Okay." Like, you can tell they're so uncomfortable, but they're like, "That's it. That's what you want me to do." That is the motion, and you need to relax all the way in between. So I
Okay.
will also see one of my big pet peeves are these like stay dry med centers. And they're like, well, it's like doing 1,000 Kegels. Well, some of the women I see are leaking because things are never relaxed. There's no room to give. So it's like so tight that if they have a slight little sneeze, it's like everything falls out because it's so
Mm.
tight. And they go to those centers and it just tightens it more. And now it's like, okay, well, now I'm still incontinent. And now I'm in pain.
If someone is at home, would they be able to know that it's either too weak or too tight? Would somebody be able to know that?
I'm not sure. And that's why what I really like, take a deep breath in, fill up your belly almost like you swallowed a watermelon,
Mhm.
and then feel it drop kind of into your pelvis. You can feel your pelvic floor relax. It's like the sphincters open a little.
Mhm.
And then on your exhale, lightly pull up like you're trying to pick up that blueberry.
Yep.
And then squeeze a little at the top till it's like challenging. And you do get
Mhm.
a tiny bit of your abs pulling into.
Mhm.
That's a Kegel. If you go all the way through that, whether you need to relax or you need to tighten, you'll get it because there's
Mm.
a full relaxation at the bottom and a full
Okay.
contraction at the top.
Now, when I was in pelvic floor therapy, she had me do the stretching, and I call it the Asian squat. And
Mhm.
only, I don't know what is the medical term is, but growing up I have a Chinese mother,
Mhm.
we always would just sit. You know what I'm saying? You just sit all the
Yeah,
way down,
yeah.
your
I call
knees
it
up
the yogi
here.
squat, but yeah.
Okay. So I was like, oh, I could do this because I've been doing this all my life. But is that good for stretching out the pelvic floor?
Yes. Deep squat, a reclined butterfly pose where you just kind of
Okay.
feet together, knees fall out to the side. I also really like child's pose.
You ever seen, what is it called, girl? Is it the noni something? The noni egg? You ever seen
Yoni eggs.
yoni
Okay, so
egg?
those are
Yoni
like
egg.
weights, I think. Yeah, and
Do those help, or would you recommend those or no?
not especially, but they don't hurt most of the
Okay.
time. What they are is it's a way to try and strengthen your pelvic floor even more instead of just doing a Kegel. Oh, now you're actually holding it in with weight. So it is, especially if you're like, oh, I never remember to do my Kegels. I don't know if I'm doing them right. That can be a beneficial option.
Mhm.
What I do and what I recommend is actually lifting weights in motions that engage the pelvic floor. So like you talked about that deep squat, like doing a deep squat and not just holding, but coming back up,
Mm-hmm.
or even doing squats or single leg squats, or like Romanian deadlifts, straight legged deadlifts, like all of
Mm-hmm.
those, or I really like wide legged good mornings, like exercises
Okay.
where at the bottom, your pelvic floor is stretching, and then you are lifting weights to get stronger to lift it back
Okay.
up.
Mm-hmm.
You'll feel your pelvic floor engage. Honestly, the best pelvic floor exercises once you have good form, it's not a
And good breath
Kegel.
work. And
Yeah.
good breath.
Like, yeah. So we start you out laying down. Let's get a good Kegel. Let's get your breath right. Let's get your
Mm-hmm.
everything moving together. But eventually it's doing like squats and deadlifts and big core movements like that you would
Okay.
see like bros doing at the gym while breathing and bracing properly, and you'll
Mm-hmm.
feel your pelvic floor gets a lot stronger.
Should men care about their pelvic floors?
Yeah, I have some male patients for sure. It can help with, especially as you get older, like maintaining erections and also preventing things like hemorrhoids and pain regarding, and also a big one for men is that they can start dribbling too, whether
Oh,
it's yeah.
oh, you mean like some leakage out of their penis? Is that
Yes.
what is dribbling,
Yeah.
girl? Okay.
Yeah. Like peeing a little, like
Okay.
dribbling, where it's even I've seen comedians joke about it that after a certain age, they're like, I pee and then I'm done and then I pee a little more. Right. And
Mm.
it's like, that's because your pelvic floor isn't fully relaxed.
Oh,
So there's a
okay.
little extra coming out. But if you fully relax it at the toilet, then you're going to have a different result.
And then they need to do the pelvic floor exercises. Would they be doing the same ones that we women do for the pelvic floor? They're doing the same exact pelvic floor exercises.
It's pretty similar. The cues are a little different, obviously, like, they don't have a vagina to pick a blueberry with, but a lot of it is, like, breathing deeply is a huge one. Some of those
Mhm,
stretches, especially for men, because they don't stretch like that as often,
mhm,
and then working on strengthening the pelvic floor in kind of the same way, and we have a few different cues. One is, like, trying to hold in a fart or trying to make your
mm,
penis point to the ceiling. Those are
mm.
both good, like, engage your pelvic floor cues that work on men.
Now, if a woman has pelvic floor issues and she's having sex, let's say that she has the pelvic floor, not the where the rectum is, the and girl,
Mhm.
I don't remember the terms, but I know the bladder one begins. Is it
Yeah,
cysto?
yeah, cystocele.
Okay,
Nice, yeah. Most
okay,
people don't know that term, so you're doing great.
okay. Okay, so let's say that she has that. If she's having sex, she's having intercourse, can the man tell? Can he feel her pelvic floor is weak, or let's say the bladder is starting to fall? Like, can he feel that?
I mean, I'm not sure. I can feel it with my finger if I know what I'm feeling for, but only at certain times. So here's the
Mm,
other thing is that it's not usually when it shows up the most unless it's actually coming out.
mm,
What it
yeah.
is the vagina is always kind of a collapse tube, but it's when you bear down, it
Okay.
drops more than it should. That's really where I see it the most. And for a
Mm,
lot of people, it's so if you're really pushing down for some reason, but usually during sex it's kind of the opposite. You're more pulling up or you're relaxed. They may be able to feel it, but it shouldn't feel bad. It's not going to be a negative feeling. The biggest thing is if the pelvic floor is very weak, where you can't get a good vaginal contraction, it can feel like less of a grip. And I think too, for women, usually they will describe, oh, I feel less sensation. And as we strengthen their pelvic floor, that starts to change.
when you're strengthening your pelvic floor, how often do you need to be doing those exercises?
80 to 100 reps a day is the recommendation. So whenever you fit them
Okay.
in, trying to do like 10-second holds of a Kegel, if you're doing that,
Okay.
80 of them a day. Whether you do that all in one go or spread it out throughout your day?
Now, this question actually came from someone. Now, I've had two different pelvic floor therapists. One, the first one I really liked. She did internal work. Some of it was a little, like I said in my video, like some of it was really invasive. I mean, my girl, my
Yeah.
coochie was spread open, and I mean,
Mhm.
you'd have thought I was giving birth. The second one, she didn't. She never looked. She was a doctor as well. She never looked at anything down there. So I thought that was odd, but I still did the exercises, right? Now, my question is now, when you go into pelvic floor therapist and let's say that you might be a victim of sexual assault, so you might not feel comfortable with somebody with their whole fist or hand, up there, because you've had some type of trauma. And I know that you also said that you work with clients who, and I don't know if it's this type of trauma, so this might be
It
a
is.
loaded question here. Okay, is there anything that you do differently when working with women who have experienced sexual trauma?
I like to think no, but I definitely do.
Okay.
And so what I mean by that is I like to think that I do this with everybody,
Mhm,
but there are some people where I notice it more. So I'll tell you, I had a patient earlier today, and there was a moment where I just paused and I was like, okay, pause for a second because you're showing some signs of anxiety. I think she seemed grateful that I noticed, but I was like, I need you to know. And I usually like try to say this beforehand. And I was like, at any point you say out, we're out. We don't have to do this. One, you're in charge.
mhm,
Two, and I always say, as with any medical professional,
mhm.
you are allowed to withdraw consent at any time. And this is like one of the like I get so angry because I think that a lot of providers don't mention that you can
Mhm.
withdraw your consent for treatment at any time.
Mm.
Any
Okay.
procedure, anything you're doing, you can say never mind, stop. I also sometimes we go through the entire evaluation and it's like we're not going to go internally today. Let's look at your breathing, let's look at this. Sometimes it's
Mhm,
just we're taking history and some of that stuff comes up. Do you have this history? Is there anything you want to share with me?
mhm. Okay.
And or is there anything you like, and that's a big one is I'll say, okay, some people who come to my office have a history of this, 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 this. You're never obligated to share anything, but is there anything that you want to share about that history? And
Mhm,
some people will, and some people say, I don't really want to say. But
mm,
the other one is, I don't put people in a position where I can't see your face because I need to watch. Because this woman earlier, her signals where she was kind of looking up and away. She was breathing a little bit more shallowly. Like I needed to see that. She wasn't going to say, "Hey, I'm really anxious about this." Part of being a medical provider, like part of how you earn the doctor, I would hope, is that you are somebody who is constantly checking in on
yeah.
and assessing your patient. And that doesn't just mean what's going on down below. Like that means what's going on. So, if I have
Mm.
somebody that's really like clearly showing signs of discomfort, I check in.
I feel like as a mature woman that we should have less confidence issues with ourselves. And this goes back to way in the beginning, why are we not having sex? I want people of a mature age to still be out here having sex. So I
Mhm.
don't want anything to block us, especially maybe the way we think or feel about ourselves. I could think that when I was in my 20s, I might have cared a little bit more. I would think I did. But then again, the beauty industry is $1 billion industry, and we still want to continue to look good, look young and all those other things. But are we still caring so much about our body image when it comes to sex and are we really allowing that to prevent us from having enjoyable sex-free sex because we're tensing up and we're worried too much about what they're thinking about our bodies?
Women who, in general, I don't even know that it's they're worried about what anyone else would think about their bodies.
Mhm.
It's if you learn from a young age that your body is a source of shame, if
Okay.
you learn from a young age that your body is for someone else to enjoy. And a lot of
Mm,
women learn this, right? Like implicitly or explicitly, we learn that, oh, you look so pretty. Oh, you're so
mhm,
like all the compliments are about how we appear to other people or about, oh, like what we can do for other people. The classic like marriage role of being a good wife, right? Is like,
mm,
what do you do for your man? Or what do you do for other people? How you're such a good mother, right? Like all of the best roles for women seem to be how do you make it easier for other people to enjoy life?
Mhm.
It's something where I'll see, well, that's not really for my enjoyment. Or
Mm.
I've a lot of the time, not always, but I've had a few older women where they're very cautious about masturbating and introducing the idea of toys just for themselves. It's
Mhm.
not about whether or not their partner is enjoying it. It's like, wait a minute, like, should I do this thing? I've had a patient ask me, like, should I buy a vibrator? And it like burst out. I could tell that she'd been wanting to ask me the entire time we'd been working together. And
Uh-huh.
finally, it was like our last thing. I was like, are there any other like questions, concerns, whatever? She was like, should I buy a vibrator? I was like, all right, let's talk about it. Right. Like, I love that. And it
Mhm.
was, if it will help you have more orgasms, yes. If it will help you enjoy your body more,
Mm.
get blood flow to those tissues, right? It's like exercise for your vagina. Like, it's good for you.
You know, and to your point, I think we are taught that at a young age, or and I don't know why we're taught this, that sex is over when he ejaculates.
Mhm.
If he did not ejaculate, then did we really have sex? And I'm like, well, what about the woman? You
Right.
know, it's like we're never gauging her pleasure, and it's not one, it's not fair. I think
Mhm.
that mindset has to change, and I think it is changing. I mean, you can hear the songs that are
Yeah.
played on the radio, girl, they're changing. But it's very sad to hear what you were saying, that yes, the nature of a woman is we take care of everybody else, right? We're the nurturers, we're the givers.
Mhm.
We take care of other people so much that we lose our identity. Once our children, and I'm an empty nester, right? Once our children go off and they grow up, it's like, well, now what do I do? Who am I now? Because
Mhm.
I've been mom for 28 years now. And when I became an empty nester, I could sit here and tell you, doctor, I struggled at first. I really did. I cried a lot because I just was like, now, but everybody kept saying, you know what, but you have time now. You have time to do other things. But well, time, what was I doing before? Like you lose your interest, you lose who you are. And I think as we age, and I think it's a beautiful age, my mature queens out here, like, now you get to redefine your life. And I would encourage everybody to do that. What is it that you've always wanted to do? And I wonder if those women that are in my comments, or those men who are in my comments, that said, well, my wife, she doesn't want to have sex anymore. I haven't had sex for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. She just lost all sexual interest. And I'm curious what happened to go from having sex to no sex. Have you seen people with menopause go through that?
Yes. So this goes back to the libido issue. So when when you first start going through perimenopause, which is the whole, 10 years leading up to menopause, is technically like one day. Usually sex drive initially increases because estrogen is dropping, but testosterone isn't dropping yet. And then at some point, testosterone drops. And testosterone is kind of like the bunny chemical. It's the, okay, yes, we
Mm.
want more. And when that drops, libido can drop sharply. And additionally, like a big part of desire and arousal and orgasm all come from blood flow to those tissues. There's one FDA approved drug. This is another little soapbox of mine. I've got a bunch.
Okay.
There's one FDA approved drug for reduced libido in women. It
Okay.
is only approved for premenopause.
Premenopause.
Right. Like, what is the point of that? Like, I mean, there are women who have
What?
that, but it is not approved for women after menopause. And so
Hmm.
there
Why
are,
not?
I don't know whether they didn't test it on that group, whether they tested it and there were too many side effects. What I do know is that there are a few supplements that do work for
Okay, let's
most
talk about
women.
them.
My favorite and the most natural one is maca root. That's MACA.
Oh yeah, I put that in my smoothies, girl. It has a
Oh,
nutty
yep.
flavor.
I've got some cocoa with it. It's great. It'll
Mhm.
it'll definitely get things moving. Strong Vivo is another supplement, and this one it doesn't work for everybody, but the people it works for are like, yes, it stimulates the creation of nitrous oxide, which is a vasodilator. It increases blood flow all
Mm,
around. And the last one I know of is Ristela, Ristela.
okay.
Similar mechanism. It's also made specifically to increase libido desire.
These
Mhm,
are natural supplements.
yeah.
Yep.
One of them, I was looking at the ingredients, and it's honestly very similar to like a pre-workout drink.
Mm.
And actually, if you take pre-workout supplementation, it's like a lot of B vitamins.
Yes, and it gets like you said, the blood flow. And I
Yes.
talked about that because it's so y'all stop sitting on your butts all day. Get up and
Mhm.
move your body because you need the blood flow, and that includes in the cooter crew and
Yes.
even in your penis. Yes, get up and
Yes. And
move.
exercise helps with libido as well.
Mm,
Getting on a walk, going on a walk or doing some kind
yes.
of physical activity because it gets you more in your body, right?
Hmm.
And it also helps increase blood flow everywhere.
Yes, and that is
Get
so
your blood
important.
pumping and it can get some ideas going. So,
I want to give you an opportunity to maybe leave us with a final thought about anything that you'd like to share that you think would be important for people to know.
I think the biggest one is that if it is bothering you, there is usually a solution to all of this stuff. And if it's bothering you, it's a problem. Because people are like, well, when is it a problem? Or when is it, as soon as it bothers you? Like, that's a problem. And that's something that you can fix with the right help.
Mm.
You do not have to buy the cute little Depends at the store for the rest of your life. You know, like oh my God, I remember they started putting like flowers on them. They're like, they're cute now. I was like, or
They
like
made them
what?
into bikinis too, girl.
Yeah, like why are we just okay with women peeing themselves after a certain age? Like who started that? I don't know. So, but you don't have to live with that stuff. Or rather you can learn to thrive. If you are having like pelvic floor issues, you can still have enjoyable sex, not pee yourself, like
Mm,
be able to go to the bathroom without pain. Like these are all things that are absolutely possible. And I
okay.
think a lot of people don't seek help because they don't know it's available and they don't know that there's anything they can do.
And they think, honestly, also, they think it's a natural part of life. I get older and this
Yes.
is what's supposed to happen. And that's what I'm
Oh,
like, okay, I know, doctor, we have got to get away from that. It's
yes.
like, no,
This is like
there's
my
other
rage
options.
bait. Like, no,
Yes.
it does
So
not have to be that way.
oh my gosh, yes. And this is again something I did not learn because I thought this was just well I pee I laugh I pee a little I'm getting older, right? You don't
Mhm.
realize that this is something that you can take care of. Now, how can our audience look you up and find you on social media or somewhere?
So my all of my physical therapy social media handles are Reclaim Your Life PT. So I'm pretty active on Instagram.
Okay,
And that's PT like physical therapist. Reclaim Your
okay.
Life is the business that I run. And then I am also, my website is reclaimyourlifept.com. I work with people in person in Charlotte and I work with people virtually.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Glaze, for I love your name, Glaze. But thank you so much for joining us today. I think this is a very important conversation, and I thank you so much for providing your professional expertise, opinion, and knowledge. So, thank you, everyone, for joining today's episode. And until next week, y'all, take care of yourselves.